There's been a lot of coverage of the Eurozone's 20 years of existence, but we like to be forward-looking at TS Lombard, and so my latest view concerns when will the Euro come of age? And coming of age traditionally has been at age 21. Sadly, it does not seem likely that on this basis the Eurozone will have come of age by next year, in the sense of having become an adult organization that is capable of taking advantage of its strengths and taking care of its weaknesses. Specifically, the Spanish and Italian economies, amongst the four major economies in the Eurozone, got into enormous trouble in 2007, 2008 because of the Euro crisis. But the Spanish have basically solved their problems, whereas the Italians have not. Spain endured 6 years of more than 20% unemployment between 2010 and 2015, itself by then way up from the 8% level that prevailed in 2007. And in the process, they got their unit labour costs down to competitive levels and have been competitive ever since, and have been growing in fact faster than the Eurozone as a whole and catching up with the lost ground in the earlier period. Italy, on the other hand, had a divergence of labour costs at the beginning, largely because Germany started off by cutting labour costs between 2000 and 2005, 2006, but the Italians not only had faster growing labour force, or traditionally growing labour force in that period, but had zero productivity growth in the first 10 years of the Eurozone, and have actually lost ground since then. So that Italian labour productivity, output per hour worked in 2018, was 3.5% less than it was in 1998, before the Euro even started. And as a result of that, the Italian costs are divergent from German costs by somewhere in the region of 13 to 20 percentage points, with Germany being substantially undervalued and Italy being significantly overvalued. And the problem, of course, is that this cannot persist for long, since what it creates is a situation in which there is a shortage of demand in the Eurozone as a whole. So that, for example, we have the idea in the Eurozone that somehow we can have full employment, on-trend growth, 2% inflation, and balanced budgets with a reasonable level of interest rates all at once. That is a fundamental principle that is assumed to be true in the policies of the Eurozone, but in fact has proved not to be true, and has only been sustainable at all with interest rates which are negative, and at the same time an exchange rate that is deliberately undervalued in order to create a vast overseas trade surplus that has enabled the Eurozone to keep growing a little bit over the last several years, although more slowly than that of the UK or the US. So where we are is that the Eurozone has really got to make up its mind about how to deal with the Italian problem, which cannot be done simply by a fiscal union, as is widely hoped, because unfortunately it's not a fiscal problem in Italy, it's a production and supply side problem, and at the moment there is no sign of any steps that will be taken that will put that right. Economically, therefore, Italy might be better outside the Eurozone and outside the Euro, but politically, of course, that would create enormous ructions, since Italy is part of the fundamental Eurozone and European project. Indeed, the whole thing started with the Treaty of Rome. So where we are is that the question of how to deal with the Italian economic problem is going to be central to the next several years, and is going to be a very difficult one indeed.